Welcome to The New World, Volume 1 by Alice Cott and Trad Moore and Heather Moore, Clayton Cowles, Tom Mueller, and read by all of us.
Worth mentioning very early that Andrew texted me. I had not realized it, but Tom Mueller is the graphic designer who's done all of the Dawn of X stuff.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's some graphic design elements of similarity there. Hey, everyone, we read New World.
Yeah, I'm glad I read the correct one because there was The New World and there was New World.
The other one looked very, very interesting.
What's
but
the other
I
one?
grabbed the other one because I knew it was Trad Moore. It looked like
realized
it was like a anthology, I think.
Huh.
So I figured it wasn't that one.
Like, start by talking about the title then? It was like a short book that was cool, but like to call it The New World didn't seem like we were defining a new world all that much. Like there was a lot of other cool stuff in this, but this title, I don't know. Like
maybe he meant this new world that we're already in.
The tie-in sort of at the very end.
I was gonna say, I feel like the end. This is like their path to the new world.
Mm-hmm. But it made it feel like calling it the New World, compared to seeing another generic name like New Frontier, is like, okay, you accomplished something, and then this is like, that didn't do that. Like this was amazing, but this made me think of it should have a name that was more akin to Something Is Killing the Children. Like that name is so weird, but something about it is like the exact perfect name for that book. And I wanted a title for this that was something like that, rather than like
what would you call it?
New Frontier. I don't know. The coolest 3-page sex scene in the world is.
Oh my god! The one page sex scene is just.
You got to include the little optic foreplay, buddy.
For sure. If there's a GIF thing, it's skipping that. Yeah, that is like such a graphic while also not having any explicit nudity sex scene. It's like. That was maybe one of the things that sold me on it my original time reading through it, because like that's where just like the paneling, the spiraling. Okay, everyone, y'all read The New World. Had anyone seen Trad Moore's art before?
Yes.
Okay.
I really loved it for Robbie Reyes's all new Ghost Rider. He did the first run on that, and that was when I first fell in love with his art. And then I remember getting like some trades, and then like there were a couple variant covers I got specifically because they were like, I wasn't even reading Punisher, I just wanted the Trad Moore variant.
And he did Silver Surfer Black, right, which I think is probably the closest in tone to this, because he did like Luther Strode's
the big one,
and he
did an issue of Zero with Alice Cott as well.
Yeah, but this just had a very strong style to it, and
he got to do real faces,
liked it.
Which I was impressed for, because you only see like, you see Norrin Rad like on one page of one issue in the Silver Surfer Black as a human basically, and this was like, whoa, holy crap, like being so good at both of those things was really impressive.
He really draws Colonel President really well, doesn't he?
Is there anyone who like didn't love the art? Because I think it is like unique enough that I could see that it's polarizing.
Nothing particularly about the art, but the colors were a bit much for me. Like the colors with no shading, and how much the color, like there's no straight palettes anywhere. It's lots of clashing. There's lots of color.
Is that all Heather?
And with
or is it like, sorry, who is it? All Heather for the color, or is it? Is it
his wife? I think so. Someone else does the flatting, but
three people, and I don't know exactly what flatting is. But
flatting is basically to make the colorist's job easier. A flatter will go through with the base palette and just fill in the line art. They don't have to do anything more than that. It's actually like very briefly was a thing that I wanted to do, but it's like very intensive, very unrewarding, because a lot of times like it's awesome that they're crediting the flatters, but often flatters never get credited. Like it was a thing that came up during a ElfQuest panel, is that they've had like 30 different flatters over the years, and like, unless you ask the Peonies, probably no one else knows who the Flatters for ElfQuest have been.
Mike, I think that's a really interesting statement, because as soon as you said it, that does make sense. Even like down to like page 4 or whatever of the giant city shot, like there's a spectacle of it, like these big color gradients, like digital color gradients and stuff, and there's like a spectacle to it. But there is like, throughout the whole book, the art has an almost overwhelming quality to it.
Right. And I think with maybe, I ended up thinking at some point, like maybe with different color palettes, all of the detail that's in there, like open on more or less any panel, and there's just a ton of detail in there, but it kind of gets drowned out for me by the color. Now, being aware that this is subjective experience, I'm prone to sensory overload. So yeah, like there were, I got up to the pretty much up to the sex scene, and then had to kind of put it down and kind of take a step away from it for a couple of days, and then I read all the rest of it today. But there's a lot there.
I really liked it. I thought that the colors and the detail and the overwhelming nature of it kind of put you in that world, which was, for me, was like Blade Runner, Akira, Transmetropolitan sort of, like, holy cow, I can't stand being in this city. I can't believe I live here and I can't leave it. Kind of.
We get that overt Akira reference on page 1, which.
I mean, and there's a page where the dad is wearing the Transmet glasses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there were references.
They're like Astro City vibes a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a long time.
For me, the art in this book is like driving down like Highway 9 with the windows down and the music up way too loud, and you're enjoying the song even if you know that, like, having the music that loud is bad for you. Like, definitely the sensory overload. Like, I enjoyed every single bit of it, but it also kind of feels like having like 3 Snicker bars on a day that you've not had any other real food. So, like, you know, like that like, you know, you've had too much sugar kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad for me. I felt like that was kind of, for me, like, what I wanted to get out of this book was like that sugar high of, oh, the crash from this is gonna maybe kind of suck, but man, what a ride.
Yeah.
There's like even with his line work, because there's a particular panel, this panel, I remember they posted on Twitter like really early on in the development of this book, and it was a black and white image. And I actually preferred that image specifically, like, as a black and white thing, because so many, like, the lines and the reflective nature of it. But the whole thing, there is sort of like a holding on for dear life quality to every book that Tradmore does. I feel like you're just sort of, there's like an octane within all of it. So I was just like really interested to see everyone's thoughts about it, because I don't think there's anyone's art that is really even too similar to Tradmore.
I think there are 2 things that, one is on the topic of what we just talked about with like the colors. And I think while the colors are polarizing, I think they are necessary. I'm trying to find like a great page for that, to his use of like her costume, all these like layered bubbly things that he does, and all of his anatomy and costumes. It's kind of necessary to make that pop, and I get why he does it, I should say. And then on the other note for it, I've got to say his ability to move you around a room and choose the right camera angles is really, really, really good. Aside from what it's like to just look at the images that he's drawing, I had probably 3 or 4 times where I just stopped and admired where I was on one panel and where I was on the other, and how it made me feel. I thought that was
There's sweet. Even one of the covers. I don't know if they show it in the collection that you guys have, but this cover,
it's in the back.
This is the A cover, and the B cover is the same scene from from the different angle, and I thought that was
that's all the variants cool. Pretty much. They're just the same. Like, it shows one statue and then the statue on the other half of where he is. Nice. It's so cool. I really liked those covers.
Yeah, I was super impressed with the point of view of a lot of the pages.
Well,
I felt like.
Please, Will, yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know how long before I start cutting out again, so I'll take advantage of it while I have it. One of the things I really appreciate about the art, as much as I love it, is with all the colors going on, I never feel like it's a challenge to follow the action. Like it still does a really good job, I think, allowing you to kind of follow the action, what's going on, and it's surprising, quite frankly, with so much going on the screen, to never just feel lost and confused with what's happening, which can happen a lot, even in, basic house style art in some of the comics. So I really appreciate that a lot in this art, because he did a lot of the same with that in Silver Surfer Black, and I just love this art. And I think I was texting Andrew about it a little bit, and I kind of was like, I want more of Tradmore's art in my life, but because I've only read a few books, it almost kind of leaves it more special, where it's like Wynn said, it's kind of just a nice little treat to kind of break away from everything else. I like it a lot. It's a lot of fun.
I was pretty impressed too with, like you said, the action's really easy to follow, and also the like emotions and facial expressions, even though they're really cartoony, like you always know what someone's feeling and thinking. And yeah, that's an extreme example.
I'm assuming that one hit Mike pretty hard as he was trying to digest those colors.
Yeah, the crazy green.
Like, I had no trouble with that kind of actually in that scene with like the kind of more muted colors of the corridor. Yeah, like I was following all the graffiti on the walls and stuff like that, and then yeah, the kind of, again, there's a single palette there that's kind of red tones with the green popping out. It accentuates it, draws your attention to it. I think it's more like, yeah, some of the later scenes, yeah, when there are clashing colors. This bathroom hurt my eyes. Just
and like
green with the blue and the repeating patterns of the squares.
The patterns almost are the thing that can be really challenging for my eyes, because like hurting is an interesting word for it, because yeah, it's like there's just so much, the scene when there's several scenes, like when we're in the like king's president's office, and if you look outside the window, all of the trees that are on these rolling hills, and they're all like perfectly recreated trees with all these mounds, and it's just like very much like, all of those scenes you see of people on acid in the trees, and they're just like, it's just like overwhelming in a psychedelic way,
except for the space needle that's sticking out of the middle of it.
Yeah,
the bathroom is just unnatural because nobody tiles their ceiling.
I kept thinking, they're like, if they see through your eyes, they'll know where you are. And I'm like, well, yeah, with the bathroom like that, it's very distinctive.
I really like over and over. Yeah, but just like that is a lot of detail to draw over and over and show the same mess at the foot of the bed when she goes back to rescue the cat.
Why do you think we get that? Is it just a plot point to find contrast between she and him, or?
I think it's a character thing, definitely. I think it's a relatability as well, because you so rarely show kind of, lots of people treat their living space like that, but it's very rarely shown in media.
Yeah.
So
I also think that there is I absolutely agree with that. And I also think that like when you have Tradmore on your art, he just kind of like Jeff Darrow, he just does a thing that feels like the scene of the car bursting out of the garage, and you're just like, awesome. Nothing physically interacts that way. Like there's like a lot of hard structures are bending, and like there's just so much curvature and motion. Like there's just a lot of I think he just for some reason just seems to dig doing his thing. He's just sort of like, yeah, I don't know, more curve. Like it's just this weird, I don't know how to describe it.
There's that like blood splatter punch where it's just kind of this weird parabola thing, funnel.
I was trying to figure out like what all the yellow is going on when he first
so I thought that it was just like manga motion lines, and then later on it's on the ground next to the car, Like after they speed off, there's still those yellow things on the ground. It's the garage door.
Yeah.
And it took me until looking at it just now to realize that it wasn't just a cool effect that turned physical and landed on the ground.
You give like lived in landscapes and like I feel like this is my life right now. Like on the phone with your boss and there's baby crying and someone's making dinner and
I joked that the sex scene was the moment that like the art really hit me, but truly it was like pages 4 to like 9 when each page is following one of the two protagonists, but they're mirrored by the spine of the book and they're moving inwards or outwards like a mirror reflection of themselves. And that was like, I remember, 9 pages in texting Django and Justin and being like, this is special, guys, this is special. Like it's just like a crazy way of relating.
See, that's the kind of stuff I love, but so I guess it's kind of telling that I was just so distracted by the colors that I didn't spot half of this stuff.
Because we kind of get to the nightclub and like that first issue, it really feels like they're slowly turning the like saturation up on you, like where she's at during her like hunt for this guy she's arresting. It's mostly kind of browns and grays, and there's the color on like the graffiti. So it feels like the color is being used pretty limited and sparingly. And then it kind of starts with like the dinner with her grandfather. We start seeing a lot more colors. And like by the time we get to the nightclub, it feels like the saturation's been cranked up to 11.
Yeah.
It just kind of stays there.
Going back like 5 to 10 minutes a bit to what Will and Emily were saying about like the action being really clear, and even with what Jeff was saying about like the trees, parts of it really reminded me of David Ravine's art, where it's almost like this like fractal like repetition, like psychedelic. But
Black
even just
Hammer, like Age of Doom guy.
Charlotte Frankenstein. Like these like the little like that little bit of detail to show you like, oh, a little sound effect or like rumble as it's going up. I love how he's able to incorporate that within the page and within the art. It really reminded me of David Ravine, and even I think Nathan was saying, where he uses the same shape and just constantly like leaves a lot of space and lots of gaps. David Ravine's is almost like this kind of like nipple like half oval thing, and it seems like Trad Moore just has like this really long wavy line that he loves to do, like with the garage scene.
I
really like just the covers. Like literally the abs are the only art I had a problem with. I was like, ew, gross. But not to body shame, but I don't know what is going on there.
Lots of the musculature is kind of
gross
80s action figure.
His Luther Strode series is like that, even more dialed up. Like he just draws muscles in a certain way, and he just seems to like doing it. Like Andrew said, like it's a weird. I don't. Again, I agree with you. I don't love like the musculature at times, but like it's almost like pustules and like boil. Like I don't know. There's a weird quality to it. Yeah.
Well, what were you going to say,
Rhett? Yeah.
Oh, I really like the attention to detail on the faces. Like everybody had a kind of unique face. And then there's a couple of scenes like where you kind of see a commonality in the face, but then you also have part of like the eyelashes leaving the face. So like oftentimes you'll see them with those eyebrows, and then every once in a while you'll see it actually leave the face. And then like I really liked these tears too, where it started out. You could barely see them and you're like, what's that? And then it like shows up and it's just like rivers of tears.
Rhett, that previous page that you had shown there, just speaking to the attention to detail, which you were just mentioning, I loved that like on that first page, that black dot, like there is this throughout the whole book, there is this metaphor of those dots being either close to themselves or close to the other person and moving, further apart. And I love that. But then it also, exactly, right there, Nathan. But then it's also sort of mirrored in pages where Miss Marie has those 3 moles, like the 2 above her eye and the 1 beneath the eye. And like there's one shot like in the second half of the book where her whole face is sort of in shadows, but those moles are drawn as white dots. And I just, I love, that's another one right there. I didn't even remember that one when it hit, but just, like there's this, I love something so small as a dot, like your, attention to detail, like you're saying, being this consistent metaphor throughout the book, and the way that you can totally not realize. This is the third time I've read this book, and I've caught things I didn't get the first 2 times.
It's impossible for me to fully show you, but on the dog tags and this first Live or Die, it says Norin, like Norin Rad, Silver Surfer. I don't know if that was...
It says Norin T. Moore is the name on him. And the blood type is O positive, which is just the 38% of people. It's just the most common, so I think it's supposed to be one of those Joe Chill, it's a generic person.
I thought it was kind of like a nod to Silver Surfer.
I really like this character. I love Silver Surfer.
There are a bunch of nods in there.
Yeah, which is really interesting. I wonder when these two were really kind of hatching this plan, to start issue 1 with page 1 being the same page of Akira is kind of, it blows my mind. But there are, like Mike said, references throughout the entire thing. And I wonder if they were just sort of consciously trying to say, let's throw a whole bunch of references. Let's just make this a thing that is all of the things that we love. The art reminds me of this Disney movie called Thief and the Cobbler, if anyone ever saw that.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, what were you saying?
The whole thing is very postmodernist. So, just drowning the whole thing with, pop culture references is a very postmodern thing to do.
So it's a mini series, right? There's not going to be any other issues. It's just complete.
That's what I was asking him. Why is this 5 issues? And are we okay with that? I mean, of course it's great, but there's not, character development wise, maybe some left to be desired, but also that wasn't necessarily the point. It was about the new world, but where did that leave you all? The length and depth.
I thought it was
more about all this.
Mike, I was like, when I started reading this time, I was like, oh damn, I didn't think this was so close to East of West, but we've got a revisionist map of the US.
When I finished reading it, I put it down and I immediately picked up volume 10 and read it cover to cover. So it just put me in that kind of mood.
Nathan, I want to follow up on that. I am curious what people thought, because we've talked about the art so far, and how do people? It was 5 issues in my brain. It was 4 issues. It's always been 4 issues in my brain. I don't know why. I really like that it's a limited series. Alish Kott also has several unfinished series out there. He's kind of like Hickman, so I appreciate that this has an end.
Well, so let's critique so it's some of the relationships themselves. How sad was it when Braden died?
No, not them.
It was so there were things like that. I felt like the relationship when that character died, I was like, oh, that I gave a little bit of a gasp, I think the relationship that started between the two of them sexually, I was on board with and felt it. That was cool. And it was like, dang, that is a really good scene. Later on, though, in that same relationship, when one of them said, when he said, I can't believe I fell in love with a cop, it was like, did you though? That was 2 issues ago, and that didn't necessarily feel like that. And I think maybe where I might be getting at with it is that when Tradd Moore had the ability to carry the relationship, I connected with it more. When it was just with the writing, maybe I didn't quite care when that character died or was hurt or whatever.
Couldn't agree more.
I had lots of thoughts about that, and it basically all goes to the main thrust that, even on the back, it just says it outright. It's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, exactly.
The issue,
Roma, you've known her for 3 days.
Exactly.
Get over yourself.
So, the issue is that it's Romeo and Juliet, but without kind of recognizing the core of what Romeo and Juliet is, which is 2 hormonal kids being stupid and thinking they're in love. And the tragedy of it, it's a tragedy, is that they, because of the political situation and the feud and the enmity between their families, they don't live long enough to find out whether or not it actually is love. It all collapses on top of them out in means that are outside of their control. All of that is missing from this because it's the same sort of hasty hormonal thing where they suddenly decide to run away together with each other. but I don't know. I didn't. There wasn't the tragic ending, so it just kind of ends with them. Okay, well they're still running off together with each other.
Yeah,
but are they really a good couple?
Right.
They spend a lot of time pointing out how they're different and how they don't have things in common. What do they have in common? It's they're on the run together. Is about it.
Yeah, the setup makes me think of like bad early aughts romantic comedies where it's like, oh, they're so opposite of each other, but you've come into this movie already knowing they're going to be happily ever after. Let's throw in some gaslighting and some radically having the woman change herself. Like that's kind of where I thought this was going. Because it definitely had that vibe of like, oh, like, you know, he's so like he's basically like the thing that really got me was like in the beginning where he's like, oh, I'm straight edge, and the bartender's response to him, it felt like that joke, the joke you'll hear, like, how do you know someone's a vegan?
Right,
They'll tell you.
Yeah.
I
Like,
really
regardless
agree.
of its reflection of reality, like that felt like that. So I was like, oh, he's so like, you know, like free and quirky, but like actually super organized. And then she's like very like literally part of the order of their world, and then her home life is a mess.
Yeah, my thoughts on that were how he walks in his regular clothes right at the start to sabotage the whole, to hack the network.
Right.
And it's like, you know, oh, he's so clever that he managed to like fool the facial recognition computers and stuff. Yeah, but everyone still saw your face,
your coat,
and your coat, your super unique scars,
pockets.
Yeah.
I mean, and he like literally says, got any hobbies? Hacking, fraud. Like he's just saying what he does.
He is
and
being
I'm like,
a stupid kid. And the disconnect for me with her, sorry,
go ahead,
was that she never really has a proper moment where she realizes how bad the whole police state is. She's been a willing participant in it.
Yep.
She's kind of like, it reminds me of the but I never thought leopards would eat my face, says woman who voted for the leopards party.
Yeah.
Was it her who was saying like I think it was her self describing when she was like, I thought I was one of the good cops because I never killed anyone.
Right. But at the same time, she says in the morning after hooking up with Guy, me being terrible names, but yeah, oh, what have we got today? Is going to be a murderer, a rapist, a bank robber. Can you believe I've never had a bank robber? I hope it's a bank robber. I need the exercise. She's talking flippantly about, you know, what, again, in our current climate, that sounds a lot like a kind of rah-rah police attitude.
Yeah.
And not like, she doesn't say, I want to stop a murderer or a rapist because then justice will be done. She's talking about them in terms of what will be interesting and new and what will be entertaining. And that's the whole wrap-up of the thing. Even the fact that she doesn't kill seems almost more of a pride thing in terms of her her media presence than anything else, because she tolerates that the other police are killing people in the streets.
I think that was it, though, is that was her like way of kind of like distancing herself from it while still totally being complicit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's literally a page before the reveal that they've seen Kirby's face where like he tells his dad, ACAB, Dad, ACAB, which, you know, like, especially in current climate, like I feel like everyone's pretty familiar with that standing as all cops are bastards.
I think that was
like that made the message of this thing like extra clear, just in case the big red sign saying "smash the police state" like went over anyone's head.
Well, and Alish Kott is, I don't know. For me, having followed Alish Kott a lot, like his personality is very present in that ACAB stuff. Alish Kott has a very definitive personality, and I almost feel like he's like Morrison or Hickman, where like I approach an Alish Kott book kind of prepared for Alish Kott's whole political identity already in that book. And I like to sort of I agree with everything everyone is saying. Like, I don't know if this book would have benefited, to go back to Nathan's very first statement, from 4 more issues, because a lot of the conversations that the two of them had, especially in the second half of it, felt like, yep, this is exactly what you need to say to get us to the next spot. Like the relationship stuff. There was a very... I have a strange degree of respect for Alish Kott's, like, Zero is a sort of psycho metaphorical amazing story, and he gets to that in different places, but he also is kind of one-dimensional at times. Generation Gone and New World I think their stories are very on the surface, whereas Zero and Material are very below the surface. Material is amazing if anyone hasn't read that, but and that really gets to the heart of his political identity. But yeah, it was weird to kind of feel like, I don't think that you're a bad writer, but some of this, like the relationship dialogue between these two, it's the line of best fit. It's like what's going to get us to the other side of where we need to be.
It felt very archetypical, is how I was going to describe it.
Yeah,
just very extremely like what Mike was saying, Romeo and Juliet. Just very like, this is the super cop. Like, they're very extreme. This is how they are. They're not changing. Oh, and they're going to be in the very typical, like, tropey way, going to be swapping. It did feel very like typical and tropey in that way. But I did like it for that reason too.
I completely believe
it felt like popcorny.
Yeah.
And also, can we talk about their outfits? They're so amazing.
I'm all for hearing about their outfits too, but Django, what did you say?
I believe the romance. Like, I believe that they were having those feelings. I was glad that they went off together in the end.
What did it for you then?
I'm with you too, Django.
I guess they just, like, they had a connection that they both believed in, and I believed in it too. And I don't think that you have to have, you know, something deeper than that, like something that makes sense to the reader or to anybody else. I think that if these two characters felt for each other, then cool. You know, there wasn't anything that indicated that they didn't, and everything that they said and did
was arguments in the desert.
Well, yeah, but
I thought that was like, a good argument.
It was a good argument. Yeah.
Like, he's a dick and talks without thinking, and she, you know, is willing to come back. Yeah, and you know, both of them are crazy privileged.
But I think Wynn's statement of this felt like like, as I was thinking about this book, I was like, there is an almost saccharine quality to this romance that I liked, but I love romantic comedies from the early aughts, and I love Degrassi. Like, it's a weird, I'm not like, this is a great piece of television, but I like Degrassi. So Wynn's statement of it, like, it reminds me of an early aughts romantic comedy, actually feels very true to me in both of the limited writing of it, but also the fact that, I don't know, like, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I was able to, like, I do kind of like that. You met eyes from across the room. One of my favorite poets is a guy named Alan Watts, and one of the things that he says often is just like, believe in or remember the honeymoon part. Like, when you get into a relationship, you start doubting and thinking about all these things. Remember the moment where you were able to believe that this person was phenomenal, even when they're not. And I really love Alan Watts. But that quote came to my mind here. Mike and Wynn both had really, really good points that I think were awesome to bring up. And I was just like, wow, they're both right. How do I make this fit with the fact that I also like the relationship?
I mean, like, even though it's one-dimensional. Yeah, like, I feel like me comparing it to an early aughts romantic comedy, like, also, like, the comparison to Romeo and Juliet, often the way you frame that comparison really says more about you than it says about the media. Like, you know, like, my view on romantic comedies also reveals, like, that I'm kind of a cynic, and I have a lot of trepidation about those kinds of romances in my real life, or like my own view on Romeo and Juliet as, like, kind of like what Mike said, like, they don't really ever get to see if it would work out because they die fast. Like, my own viewpoint on that also is clouded by, like, you know, like, I'm relatively young. I'm not gonna toot my horn too loud. I'm only 26, so I can kind of still remember being a 14-year-old and, like, being like, oh, oh, I'm so like over the moon for this person. Like I can kind of still feel that. Like that's not what this is. Like this is, despite the saccharineness of it, like it's still enjoyable to read about these two. They are both clearly adults, and like that's not bad. I do agree. Like I'm here for this romance.
And I think each of their broken pieces fit well together. You know, like they're a good match, even though they're not super similar.
Maybe I need another reread, but I feel like I guess I wanted more showing of that.
So I think that's really valid. It could have used several more issues.
There was one thing that I will go. Oh, there's one thing that I'll go to in that shows their brokenness. It was in those first pages 4 through 9 where we're seeing the mirroring of their two relationships. At the bottom of one of the bottom panel of one of those pages was her walking through the whoosh on the way to work. The brainwashing, the setting in of the thing in her head, whatever that is, and then him walking through a door listening to guerrilla radio. And I think that should have been highlighted more and not a thing that I'm like barely remembering that I had to go back and look at, because that shows like everything about what we're talking about right now. Django said like it's two broken people. Okay, cool. It's also two people who are clearly adults, which I believe that Wen said, and like they brought up a good point with that. And then Mike said,
I said they were stupid kids. So
stupid kids. Okay, so but no, listen, why this works? Sure. Because
I mean, you can be clearly adults, but also stupid kids.
And why are they stupid kids? Because they have nothing. He has Rage Against the Machine, and she has the whoosh of her grandfather or whatever, and they've been taught one thing, and then they go to each other, and they're not explicitly saying it, but they're two people that have in common that they kind of have nothing of their own. And then they go through a little bit of a growing pain, and like 14-year-olds could do if you're actually, little high school sweethearts that fall in love, they do. And that thinking of that panel makes me a little bit more on board with the development of the romance, I think.
I did not notice that was a thing that happened when she got off the elevator. That's super cool.
I haven't either. I just looked for the guerrilla radio panel. So what is the whoosh?
It's right here.
She walks. I see that it's beneath that panel I love so much.
It happens whoosh 3 times in the book. That one is not the one. I mean, that's one of the later ones. Maybe it's not super early, but it's one where he's listening to guerrilla radio and then she's getting the whoosh.
What is the whoosh?
I assumed it was like her like.
That's what I thought too, Mike.
I guess like the positioning of the whoosh made me think that it was like somehow like
tied to the
tricking her into thinking that the cameras were being turned off.
I don't know.
It looks like
they mentioned later.
So that's her, the whoosh, and then this is him listening to guerrilla radio. Right. So it's both of them like getting their own version of their brainwashing at the same time.
I didn't actually draw that comparison, and I think that is really interesting also to kind of compare it to like brainwashing as an idea, because the guerrilla radio thing is almost like an on the surface, like, yeah, me and my friends are trying to create a guerrilla radio station. And I was like, this time the sort of very surface level of that hit me.
Well, the thing is, she's listening to music during this as well. You have the musical notation happening.
It's classical music,
yeah.
What were you going to say, Emily?
Actually, a good lead-in from what Nathan was saying was just, I mean, within the confines of the part of the story we get to see, they're very much just symbolic to each other. Like they're in love with the idea of each other and kind of what their places are in this society and as people, even just with like the messy meat thing. I don't know if that's the best basis for like everlasting love, but it definitely seems to be the basis of like what's driving them in the story, which I'm totally okay with, because it's almost more a story about activism than the actual love story.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't really touched on the activism and the structure of the world and the plot of what happens and what they do, which, because I actually, the relationship is kind of the forefront of the story, but I do think the world building is maybe more interesting than some of the character work and relationships.
Totally agreed.
Andrew, when the wall shows up and that singular page, and that also kind of speaks, like, Mike, that's not the overwhelming color stuff, but it also is like the weird digital gradient which is a thing that I remember early on in my comics, like somebody just being like, I hated when they started recoloring old comics with digital gradients. And I was like, what is that? And then when it happens, like when a digital gradient shows up in a comic book, it always stands out to me now. But that image is amazing.
That image is overwhelming. Like I have nightmares about just that little sliver of sky up there. Jeff has probably heard me talk about the gigantic nickel that hovers above me in my nightmares, and
I actually have never, so we'll talk on that next perfectly acceptable podcast. But
yeah, and then kind of loop back. I'm apologize. I don't remember who it was who wanted to talk about their costumes.
It was Andrew, like, and yes.
So like, I feel like one of the first like great bits of their costumes is, let me see, how am I lining up? So like these two, like they're like the same, and also like, so his like pants were totally drawn by suddenly I can't remember his name, Pouch Man. Liefeld, thank you. I'm like, I don't know why I couldn't remember his name, but yeah, like,
good on you.
Well, there was a lot of like samurai qualities in a lot of costumes as well, like in his costumes, but also Logan Maximus. Like, and not just that the design of the costumes is itself, you know, kind of historically evocative of Japanese feudalism, but the actual artistic style and proportions are symbolic of some traditional and contemporary Japanese art styles. Like the giant baggy pockets you're talking about there. I've definitely seen contemporary Japanese artists. The shoulder pads, the epaulets, the
like those the baggy shorts with all the pockets. Like I could hear that.
But there were, I think it was during the action sequences, and particularly later on with Logan Maximus, there are points where just the proportions of his armor just seem ridiculous.
And that specific character is what reminds me of the Disney movie Thief and the Cobbler, and I'm going through Google Images right now.
Keep saying Thief and the Cobbler.
Has anyone ever heard of that movie? You have?
Yeah, the thing is, I've never actually seen it. It was a commercial on, oh gosh, which Disney movie? It was
a cassette.
It was on a VHS tape, and it was on one. I feel like it must have been on, like, it came like maybe Aladdin.
I want to show,
or Beauty and the Beast, or one of those two
specifically. Like,
but the Thief and the Cobbler, I remember it because also it has the spires, and like it has like this transition where like the top of the spire becomes a bead, and
I think
such a beautiful looking movie.
I think Trad Moore owes. I need to do some Google research to see at this point, like how much of it is coming from this type of art style. But I'm going to send one out to chat here. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And then you're going to do some tweeting to Trad Moore if you feel like it's close enough, and ask him.
But here's just like the background of this. I just threw it up there. Like this is like the bathroom that Mike was talking about, but also then like the weird circular. Anyway, it's not relevant to the story. I'm sorry, but it's just like I have been obsessed with the fact that there's a connection between that movie and this comic since we talked about it on the podcast when episode 1 came out 2 years ago. So
is it like a shoe cobbler, or is it like a blueberry cobbler?
I'm not sure, cobbler. But I think someone just knocked on my door. So please keep talking.
Yeah. So one thing that kind of drove me nuts about the book was that there's a lot of discussion about technology, and reading it a year and a half or 2 years after it came out, like we don't talk about blockchain anymore, and we don't talk about the Internet of Things anymore.
Oh, is that a real world thing?
Yeah.
So the Internet of Things is an idea of it's your smartphone, it's your refrigerator that connects to the internet, the bulbs, your little corporate spy agent that you may have purchased for yourself to play music on.
We named it the Internet of Things, and then everybody was like, that's terrifying, but we'll let it into our house anyway and stop talking about it.
Yeah, ignore that it's not there. It's just my smart home.
And I'm sure that blockchain is still, a thing that people are using, but it's not like you don't hear even about Bitcoin much anymore.
I did like how someone's like, don't call it that. It's your home pal or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess they felt like that was clunky also.
Your Alexa.
On that note, Val, I think, was my favorite character in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, again, like that just felt like such a very like pointed little piece of narrative. Like they talk about, like she's like, they're gonna make me tell them everything, and that just made me think of like in recent years, like Apple refusing to unlock an iPhone, and you know, like concerns about like even recently with a protest, like police using GPS on your phone, on protesters' phones, to see that they were there during the time of the protest.
Yeah.
So like that felt very real to me.
Well, I mean, it's you know, we live in 1984, and so do these characters.
Yep.
It just happens to be 2184, 2137, or 2037.
So,
that's not even really that far away.
Nope.
being a Southern California native, I was curious if anybody else kind of caught the significance of the Griffith Park Observatory being the palace.
Oh, I missed
and that power dynamic. And so
like I recognized it as like a place, but I'm not familiar with Griffith Park really.
So Griffith Park Observatory, probably one of the more known things, things that it's more famous for, is it has probably like 2 or 3 pivotal scenes in Rebel Without a Cause. And so I thought it was a really interesting, maybe even just a reference, if anything, to Rebel Without a Cause, where they're having dinner there and she's kind of got this rebellious attitude, for lack of a better term. But the significance that the observatory plays in Rebel Without a Cause has a lot of parallels with kind of just her attitude in general towards the hierarchy and everything else. So I thought that was a really neat, if anything, just a small reference, but it was really cool to see it there. And you'll notice it if you know it well enough. You'll see it in lots of other movies, but that's where it really came. Rebel Without a Cause, where it first came to a lot of prominence.
Is that in one of the Men in Black movies?
I feel like yes, but I have not watched any of the MIB movies recently.
Listen, this is what happens when Jeff leaves.
Jeff!
We start talking about Men in Black.
I believe
as long as the Men in Black don't come and take us all away.
I believe that was a location that was fairly prominent in like the first run of the Runaways comics as well.
Yeah, like wasn't the
that was the spot that they all met up at.
Yeah.
So there is
Jeff.
Hey
what?
Jeff.
Hey.
It was all falling apart without you.
Sorry, my I live in a duplex, and the other member
getting comics delivered.
The other member of the duplex passed away yesterday in their sleep, and we're just dealing with some weird stuff now with that, but we're gonna be okay. And I missed several minutes of this conversation. I'm sorry to barge back in.
Well, we were just talking about how we need to call you the Ghostbusters.
Oh God, that seems appropriate. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, Spangler. If I can get Spangler here.
I love this shower scene with all the water and her like shooting it through her teeth and just like having fun. It was a really good scene because I feel like a lot of shower scenes just try to over sexualize, and it's just like, nah, it's just like she's having fun singing in the shower. It was fun.
And he is also, so like he came up with that really interesting way of drawing a shower for like 2 pages of a pretty long comic.
When Mike was sort of mentioning with like them dealing with the night after, that's what I kept thinking. He was like, but at least we got that panel of her shooting 3 streams of water out of her teeth. That's very good.
I just realized, why does he have an eye patch? He never puts it over his actual
we don't get
eye.
any closure
about
that.
Because of the grandfather's
same reason that like, you know, like people wear glasses that they don't actually need. It looks interesting.
Oh no, I
just
do one of these.
I just watched Back to the Future 2 and was just like, oh God, these costumes are so atrocious. You know, just kind of reflecting when I was a kid, thinking the costumes in Back to the Future 2 were so cool, the futuristic ones, and then watching it now and feeling like, oh, this is just so horrible and over the top. But then having that same feeling reading this and like, oh, these costumes are so cool and ridiculous, and I just love them. I'm just falling for the same thing over and over again. And in, you know, 15, 20 years, will be the exact same. Hello, cat. Be the exact same feeling reading this again.
Cat.
By all means, step on my keyboard.
It's because he's building a pirate radio. And I think it's maybe a parallel to the grandfather's like lazy left eye.
Like that's the other thing I really liked is like the way that Tradmore draws him having like this old wrinkled face, is that his face does like slowly get more and more melted, it seems like, as it goes, and then like right at the end there, like his face is fully melting.
Yeah, that kind of confused me for a bit.
So yeah, I'm interested. So Mike, actually, I would love to just hear your kind of confusion about that.
Like he's literally melting there. What's going on?
I'm equally confused.
And I wonder just sort of how much like what I said earlier is like sometimes when you just got Tradmore on a book, that guy is just gonna do his thing.
But it happens twice.
Yeah, he melts people. He turns them into liquid. That guy does.
Ugh.
Well, maybe the wall coming down just melted his face. It was so shocking. It was
a face melting.
He's so sad.
Like whenever I think of face melting, I always think of Raiders of the Lost Ark with the
good movie?
Don't give Django that win. Don't give him
with the guys popping the Covenant open and just
spoilers.
I love.
I refuse to say spoiler alert for Indiana Jones.
I'm going backwards again, but these outfits as well. Oh man, they were so good.
Those ones had a big sort of Fifth Element feel to them.
Yes,
you're totally right. So I read this book for the third time today, and in my brain, like I said, it's always been 4 issues. My third read through. This is the first time I've ever read issue number 3. Which is the dress up, and that's the problem with trying to read the issues. Last time I read it was a year ago, and anyway.
Hey, don't get on your soapbox here. Django doesn't need this.
It's just I was like, oh my god, I've clearly never read this before, and it's like that.
So you went straight from we'll have to cut it out of your head to sitting out in the desert. All around a bonfire, listening to some sad cowboy music. Probably.
Let's not forget, Jeff was probably smoking quite a bit then. Well, when you were reading it then.
I was in Austin, Texas. I was just stressed for time. That was the day that House of X #1 came out, and I was reading it on an airplane that was delayed. But I was smoking a lot too.
Here's I read this as it came out. And so I didn't catch the one bit of foreshadowing to the fact that the wall is a hologram.
Oh, I wanted to know, is there something?
Yeah, what is that? Yeah.
It's really early on when she has her dream of her parents in the car. Her dad worked on the wall, and he says, it's sort of funny, get close enough because a part of the system is physical. I could even try hacking into the mainframe. So like he's talking about the wall that they're headed to right there.
I could hack into it. We could bypass the actual wall itself and just go through
That's what they end up doing.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and they ask about the password. And she says, kind of impossible to forget, don't you think? And holds up this little amulet, and it glows a little bit. That's the amulet that Stella Maris wears, and it says Stella Maris.
Show me the amulet. Is that the same image that shows up right before the sex scene?
So there's...
Every one of us shows
she's got it around her neck when she wakes up.
Yeah. It's like there's the page with the Legos, and then turn the page and you can see the amulet around her neck.
Yeah, and I kept seeing it, but in this moment right here, I kept thinking, why is this framed the way that it is?
That's when they meet.
Right, but that thing right there, it seems like, is that the symbol of the amulet? If not, maybe it's nothing.
It definitely is evoking the same, because I think the amulet has like, I assume it's supposed to be like a saint kind of looking thing. It does kind of have a similar...
I assumed it was the amulet. When I read this time, I stared at that for a while. I was like, well, maybe that's the amulet. I'm just curious if anyone else spent too much time on that panel.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's not, if it's, words. If it's supposed to kind of evoke that image, I wouldn't be shocked because it does have, to me, it has a similar geometry.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, I spent too much time on every panel.
Buddy, that's me too. That's why Django's always like, I read comics faster than you. I'm like, well, I
followed every wire and all the cat claws and
the rainbow cactus.
Did that wall coming down or, being revealed to be fake, whatever, hologram, did that catch anybody by surprise? It certainly caught me.
It blew me away.
I was not expecting it at all.
when I read this the first time, I got to that and I was like, this just went from a pretty cool comic to one of the best, like, coolest things that I've ever read.
Of that year for sure. Also,
Well, like, listen, I live day to day.
I didn't mean. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry.
It's the best comic I'm holding right this minute.
This isn't Papcast. This is a different
grades on a daily curve.
I really love this page because it's giving you the wall and it's giving you the geography. Like everything is inverted.
Oh, where's the
and
wall?
Her
there?
little
Is it
patch. It's
yeah. The wall is in purple.
Yeah,
I was enamored with the idea of, so what do I do with it? Which is just like such a beautiful, like, I don't know, I'm an 18-year-old. I heard that you would like this gift that I gave you. Yeah. I don't know. What do you do with it? I don't know what you do with a flower.
I would do some things for a rainbow cactus. Come on.
Yeah.
I have room for more plants, I think.
I have a question to pose. And I'm also just going to say, before I pose that question, the Wish is just an elevator, guys. It's just an elevator. But the
Wishes?
They missed it. Okay. They missed something there. They missed something. They should have used that. What did you guys think about in the issue that Jeff never read? The like pseudo fourth wall break, and then later on where like the narrator comes at
like the record scratch.
Yeah, like where we.
Oh yeah,
I liked it. I
like that.
Wasn't sure what to think about it, and when the narrator jumped back in at the end, I was like, okay.
I wish they'd done it another time.
Yeah, I think I maybe needed a little. Yeah, I actually think a little more of that would have, I don't know, made it more palatable somehow. That the whole postmodern feel would be, even brought further into the fore by doing these kind of things.
I'm coming from a sorry, Jeff.
No, please.
I'm coming from a slightly weirder perspective in that I kind of realized during pandemic time that I'm a pretty big fan of Alice Cott, and I've read a good chunk of his stuff in the past couple months. And so definitely that felt like Jeff was saying earlier, he's kind of Hickman and Morrison-y, and like he follows the same type of formula a lot. That felt just very typical, like, yeah, he's just breaking the fourth wall, like, what's going on? Trying to follow like some fun trope. And
exactly what I was gonna say, dude. Glad you said it instead of me.
You said that you did it earlier to me, so
you gotta share a brain.
I'm just thinking and realizing, I think the dad is the most complex character.
I wanted to ask
kind of
about
one-dimensional. Yeah, the dad has like layers that are revealed as time goes on, and I kind of love it.
Like an ogre.
Yeah, like or an onion. Which
did he never tell his son that he had that job? I mean, it wasn't clear to me at all that he ever told his son.
He seemed like a very closed-off dad.
Yeah,
he didn't talk about a whole lot. Just kind of was like
yeah, like what we get of the dad, like in the present day, feels very much like a parent trying really hard to connect with their kid because they've realized that like they've somehow ended up on opposite ends of a spectrum from their kid, and like so often like there's lines like, or like a girl or a guy, I'm a progressive dad. Like it felt very like trying a little too hard.
Yeah. Didn't that feel kind of like the blockchain Internet of Things, though? Like,
okay, wait.
A whole 2 years ago, it was like really cool of a dad to be like, I mean, gay's cool too, and now it's like, do you have to say that?
Agreed, 100%. Can someone explain blockchain to me in 30 seconds?
Blockchain is a thing
in which
Wynn
gets runs on.
Wynn gets it. She spoke first.
Yeah, blockchain is basically like how you get bitcoins.
Thank you, Wynn. You're amazing. I now know how to get.
Like when they say they're mining for bitcoins, they're working on the blockchain.
Okay.
Encryption.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I was excited to ask that question as I read this.
So it is often confused with another thing called blockchain that's on Twitter.
And that's what I thought of was the Twitter thing. Okay, great.
Yeah, but in this case, it's definitely referencing the Bitcoin and not the how to block lots and lots of Nazis on Twitter.
Okay. Can we talk about this page where Colonel Sanders seems to indicate that his daughter is the person of color there, which seems to be who he would be trying to keep out of the country with the wall.
Keep in the country with the wall?
Out of the country with the wall.
I thought that the thing about the wall in this is they were trying to keep people in the country. It was like the inversion.
But initially it was to keep them out, and now it's to keep them in.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It just like he is like almost almost like Hickman stark white.
Yeah, he's like a pile of powdered sugar for sure. But
yeah, and like I would expect him to kind of have a hard time with his granddaughter because she's mixed in the other way.
I
that
interpreted...
actually was an interesting. Oh, go on, Mike.
Mike, yeah, you go first. Go.
Okay, I interpreted, oh, my dear girl, she's got you in her blood and she doesn't understand what it was like at all. No. To say it was the son. I saw that as it's his son, but it's her. I don't know. Just
I understand
to me like maybe
history.
to me it felt like the dad, like the grandfather, was blaming the daughter-in-law for like radicalizing his son.
Okay. Emily,
kind of makes sense. I was just gonna say, when I was reading this, I did kind of notice they sort of wrote it as like a post-racial United States, which I think was kind of a weird dodge, given the fact that there'd actually be kind of a lot to explore there in this story. But they kind of just were like, no, it's very multicultural. We'll just not make that an aspect of the story.
That's a really good point, and I think that might be the type of thing that like Alish Cott might just sort of take for granted that that's a thing that could be explored, because the politics of Alish Cott, and if you don't know him, he is like a pretty eccentric person, and he's very vocal online. Yeah, I think your point is absolutely true there, and I think that he probably could have explored the nuance of that a little bit, but I think he's even thinking in kind of broader strokes of his own politics.
I feel like parts of it were touched on. I mean, again, very briefly, just like in these panels, how it was showing like this is South Central LA. It's still very mixed, Black, Hispanic, and then Beverly Hills. Like these guys are it's like 30 people on a block all having a barbecue versus like 4 people in a nuclear family in a home watching TV together.
Andrew, great point. Good. That's a great point to point out.
Yeah, it felt like more like there was definitely still classism.
Yeah.
Not kind necessarily.
Of going back to that quote that we had just been reading, that how can a man maintain the state of things? It almost seems like he was trying. The border wall was almost just so he could keep America or keep New California or whatever it was called the way it was, and just stop any outside interference, stop outside culture, like just keep things the way they are. This is going to maintain the status quo, and we don't have to worry about losing power anymore.
That's Orwellian nationalism 101, is you control your population by making sure that they're unaware of how the rest of the world is operating. The rest of the world is the enemy. We have the best country. Trust us on this.
Listen, I trust Mike.
Well, we do, Mike.
Trust us on this. Listen, it's 9:04, and I want to move towards what are our closing statements on this? What is everyone else's closing statements?
I'm still so mad at the name. Seriously. It just...
You know what? If I cannot blame you. I have weird hills that I die onto.
I don't put a lot of stock in names, but I appreciate that that's where you're coming from.
Like for me, it's really more of the description that compares it to Mad Max that bothers me more than the name.
That too. But that's what the name
not really
means
Mad
to me.
Yeah, it's not very Mad Max to me.
You know, writing
it
the
actually
name
was
on
pretty
there...
in 1984, but I also hate how everything gets compared to 1984.
Yeah,
but that was actually probably a good.
That's kind of how I feel about Mad Max in the last 5 years. I feel like everyone wants to compare their like post-apocalypse thing to Mad Max, and like, okay, but if you don't have Charlize Theron driving a truck across the desert and then just driving straight back after punching Tom Hardy in the face, is it really Mad Max?
Well, that's the thing. It's not even diesel punk.
Oh, it's the old guard Mad
exactly.
Max?
Yeah. I need to Google diesel punk now.
There's no Tom Hardy in Old Guard.
What I do like about this, that I feel, I don't know if it's one-dimensional or not, but what I walked away from this book liking the most is the kind of one-dimensional romance. And what I liked about it is the kind of gender swap that they did there, even though that like in 2020, that's not at all a unique thing. But I don't know, like I appreciated this like pretty... I liked that the dude was a timid guy who was like, I don't know, I identified with him. And I also heavily identified with his attraction and infatuation with this person that is all of the things that he is not. And for me, maybe it is present in a lot of other things, but that dynamic isn't a thing that is incredibly present in a lot of kind of surface level romances. It at least shifted things in a way that I appreciated, because like I don't buy into most traditional romances that they sell us, and the way that this person interacted with, you know, the other I identified with, and I really walked away with. And when I was pacing around my home thinking about what to say here, that was the thing that I walked away liking the most with this book, was just sort of the kind of saccharine relationship there that, you know, wouldn't get by on a Papcast.
What am I going to say? I read this book. What do I say about it?
Oh God, have you met me every day? How do I talk about this thing?
I have to sit on it for like another couple days, but this might be my favorite thing we've read yet.
Really? That's awesome to hear. I
really enjoyed this.
It's up there for the non-East of West stuff. It's probably top 2 for me.
My experience of drinking some champagne last night and enjoying it out on the porch was that was issues 2 through 4, and that to Andrew's point, that was an awesome experience. Like, I'm dying on a weird hill here, but the experience of the book, like driving, was it Wen that made the point of like driving through?
Yeah, driving up.
What you want to listen to?
And having it maybe a little too loud.
Good recommendation.
Yeah, and I think circling back to that point and my points at the beginning is, like I think it was an interesting palate cleanser for me to kind of realize how, you know, the things that I like about things like Gideon Falls and Skyward and East of West, which are the things that are more subdued and complex, where you can see you've got enough quiet and enough complexity to spend a good amount of time just quickly deconstructing things. Whereas, this is very surface level. It's fast. It's loud. And
it's Rage Against the Machine.
The art was definitely my favorite part. I really love like psychedelic rock album covers from the late 60s, and it really reminded me of that a lot.
Definitely, if you like the art, I highly recommend Luther Strode.
Emily, next time I end up on your front yard talking about comics for the next book club, we're going to talk about post-Tradmore for things. Black.
I'll bring my Moby Grape albums.
I want one of these pages on a black velvet painting.
Exactly. Hey, we've heard from a lot of everybody here so far, and what I actually would love to hear is just like, Rhett, thanks for being here. What did you think about this? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Like, this is a departure from a lot of the stuff that I've seen you read in the past. I'd love to hear just sort of, did you like being a part of this particular book?
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. I generally am reading kind of adult themed books, and so if I was to judge this by the cover, I probably wouldn't have selected it. Just thinking it was more, I don't know, young person type material or something, you know. So being relatively new to comics, you know, there's a lot of color in here, which I guess that would have just thrown me off. But I really enjoyed it. The artwork was definitely unique, and there was plenty of adult relationship complexity to it, and then plenty of mystery and trying to figure stuff out and track the storyline. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a great.
If I could ask one more question, did you like the art more or the storytelling more?
I think I liked the art more. I just thought, like I said earlier, with the detail and the characters, I just really clued in on that and just found that really different than things that I'd read so far.
It is so, Tradmore is just kind of off from everybody. So that was the thing I was most excited to hear about, was just how did people take in this incredibly unusual art.
And I've got one question for you, Rhett. Is that a green screen behind you with just a spot of a door and everything, or is that a room?
Django and Rhett.
It's a room. It's just my office, my own little room here.
Listen, I don't have any room to talk.
I've got my.
You're gonna edit it before you put it on YouTube.
Well, so this is our last non-East of West book of the book club.
Book club season 1, right?
Book club season 1. I can't wait to talk to everybody about East of West Volume 10 next week, and then we'll take a little break, and I'm excited to get back into it. Wynn, you look like you're on the cusp of saying something for like 45 seconds. Go.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about book 10 with you guys, but also, it's over.
I haven't read it yet, so when my stack.
How
did you not immediately after yeah.
Oh, Win, you know what it's like to work at a comic shop.
Oh.
I know.
And also, it took me like 2 years to read the last Terry Pratchett book.
Oh, yeah.
Like I hold off the last of something because I don't want it to end.
Too. I haven't seen the last episode of Red Dwarf, even though I have the whole series memorized.
On that note, I finished Watchmen finally.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So after we finish East and West Volume 10, maybe we'll just all gather to talk about things that we've finished or something. I don't know, because I could talk about Watchmen or Red Dwarf for a long time. But again, especially like this week, a crazy week, all sorts of crazy stuff has happened, and our we have a store. We're selling all of these comics online now to try and make our business work. And there's a lot of people from just all over the world that are trying to just buy expensive comics from us. And every time that it happens, I just get filled with this sense of gratitude for the people that show up at our shop, that like to be in our shop to read comics and then have a, exchange of conversation. It means the world to me. It has only become more and more important to me in this quarantine time. So I can't wait to have our final episode next week and then figure out where we're going from there. So really, genuinely, thank you all. You are a salve for a weird, strange, shitty part of the business that has come up in needing to have a business during quarantine.
People keep thinking that we're selling $200 eBay items for $3.99 because
all the time.
Yeah. And then they get really upset when we cancel their order because we don't have it.
I've had to apologize to so many strangers that don't know me. $200 1 in 100 variants of comics that we don't order because we're a small store.
Of course.
And then when we're saying like, hey, we don't get that comic, they get mad at us.
Even though it said 3 times before they checked out that it probably wasn't going to fill.
It's beautiful that it allows our store.
We like you all a lot.
Yeah, it's beautiful that our store is allowed to be open during quarantine, but it has opened us up to a thing that is kind of damaging to 2 people who spend most of their energy just trying to build a community. So
puzzles to solve.
This is
fine.
This is the best part of owning a comic shop. So thank all of you for being here, and I can't wait to talk to you all next week. So
thank you for driving around said community all the time and making all this good stuff happen.
We love it.
Yeah, that's really cemented the feeling of it being a community.
To my door, Jeff.
You're all amazing. Every single one of you is amazing, and I've loved delivering to all of you. And I know all of your addresses.
Yeah, I know where you all live.
This is true. I'm pretty far away, so I feel okay.
Yeah, with the exception of Win, I could create the fastest route from any part in town to each of your houses and back home.
One can get to my house quickly, not even the fire department.
I'm trying to time it to where I get comics 3 days a week. If I can get that's a good week.
It brings me like literal joy to deliver comics to each of your guys' house. We mentioned it, I don't know if it was last week or whatnot, but Mike had an order come in, and Django and I texted each other. We were just like, wait, this is a book club person. We need to get this person their book now. So
yeah,
you're all really wonderful.
Appreciated that.
No, we appreciate all of you guys. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you all, and we'll start season 2 after that.
Okay, have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Keep safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Good.